Well, I have seen all of these works of art, and they have all impressed me, and some have brought me to tears, and some have made me laugh in unexpected ways, and some have made me think about what's going on in the world today and how dissatisfied I am. But all of them have moved me in some way. But just to get started, I just want to talk about what drove each of these artists to the particular story they're doing. What was their personal connection to it, and how did that impact what they did? Let's start with you, Jan.
So in Slippery Slope, Deborah's really at a crosshairs for, what she should do. There's this kind of corporate mandate to silence, a story about a certain perverted man. And, she also has been asked to fire Ava, this person she has this long relationship with, who's helped her kind of reinvigorate her career. And so she's really at a crossroads for like, what is the line in terms of what am I doing morally and what am I doing ethically and what is the best thing for my career and my show? And I think what drew me to that is I also kind of, increasingly with my dissatisfaction with the world at large, I'm often asking myself questions about really what is my use? Is it really through, trying to do art that says something, or should I literally just quit it all and try to go start a anti-heritage fund or whatever, heritage project or whatever. So I think that those like larger questions about being an artist and also trying to do it in this corporate machine, and the difficulties that can come with that, I think is something that it resonates with me pretty deeply. And so I think that's probably my deepest connection to where Deborah is. And also, my creative collaboration with my partners is, a huge part of the story and there's a huge part of that story. And so it really is so autobiographical.
Awesome. Janicza?
It's about a year ago, actually, I got a text from Io and Lionel, who are both in the show and who wrote the episode, saying that they'd written an episode and if I'd be open to considering it. And I just said yes. I was like, but then I was like, wait, should I read it? But I just said yes because I adore them and am a fan of them. I was a fan of the show, and I hadn't done episodic in a little bit. It had been like maybe a couple of years since I'd like stepped in to do a show, but I think I was sort of craving being on a set and being around something that already had its footing, and the pleasure of figuring out how you learn the vocabulary that's already been established and then maybe add a little bit of yourself, but basically like find yourself inside of something that already exists, which before had been turning me off, but I had found myself like I was curious for it because I did really like the show, and I just wanted to be around those performers and see what it was like to step in.
Awesome. Antonio?
Well, personal, this is a safe space, right?
Very safe space.
I had been developing something and it didn't go through, didn't happen. And I was depressed. And I was just looking for, I was like, I want to do a pilot. I was like, I want to do a pilot. I want to be on a set. I want to work with people. I want to be in a space where I feel good. And I went looking and I read everything and read everything and read everything. And then this script came along, and I was like, I had read a lot of scripts where there was a dead body in the first 10 minutes. Every serial killer had come to me, and I was like, I can't. And then I read the script and I was like, oh, there's 10 minutes of a character just being kind of sad in her house. And then there's this annoying neighbor, and this annoying neighbor turns out to be this guy who may or may not have killed his wife, which I am familiar with from my other work. And and then it turns out that these two kind of become weird bedfellows, and then somehow this character who is, by all accounts, evil somehow is exactly what this woman needs at that moment in her life to get through some trauma. And I just love that idea, and I love that the centerpiece of the episode was two people talking at a table for 10 minutes. And all those things, and then I got on set and I worked with these amazing people and these amazing actors and crew, and I was like, yeah, this feels good. And so yeah, that's how I ended up doing the show.
Leslie?
I just have to say, it's awesome sitting here with these amazing directors, and I'm happy. It's just great to be having these kind of conversations, and I love that it's all different areas, but it's still all storytelling. Anyway, so I developed this. That's not true. I was sent the first hour, and I was on the edge of my seat. So I love being in the back rooms of power. I want to know how decisions are made. Now, in this particular government, I don't know if I want to be in those rooms, but in general, I love that. And to me, the idea of dealing with what is truth in a post-truth world, when we can't tell the difference between fact and opinion. And, we created, this is all, again, there are two journalists as writers, the former head of NBC News, Noah Oppenheim, Eric Newman from Narcos, and Michael Schmidt, two-time Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist from the New York Times. So this is all very factually based. So after reading the first hour, I developed the next 5 hours and directed all 6 of them. Yeah. So
Because you're glutton for punishment.
which was amazing, and I can tell you, Robert De Niro was attached when I came on. So I was very nervous to meet him. He's a legend. How's that going to work? And he was awesome. He was a great partner. He's a great number one. He's very collaborative. But a 0-day event is a hack in software that can be patched. And hopefully you get it before it does damage, but it's the most intense cyber weapon that the intelligence community has. So we looked at this. If there was a cyber attack that took down every industry at the same time, like an event on the scale of a 9/11, God forbid, would we behave differently? Would we look for the truth? Would we find who had done it? Or would we panic and give up all civil liberties? So these are the questions that interest me. And I had an amazing DGA team, one person from Antonio's, and of course an extraordinary cast.
Great. Liza?
I often find that there are really personal ways into things that, like, you say yes before you even know what the story is or something. And on The Diplomat, I've been fortunate that I've worked on it since the first season, and I'm not surprised that I could find a way in. But when I got episode 6, I read it, and it all takes place in Allison Janney's character's country house. And there's like a 12-page scene where they eat oysters and drink cocktails. And I emerged as a filmmaker from the avant-garde and then from independent film, not lucrative. And I supported myself during those many years as a college professor in a small town. And I always said that one week every year we should just take the cinema of the town and just, for all of the screenings, just only play Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? And I feel like that was my way into this episode, which is fundamentally about 4 people who can't get very, very far apart from each other, bickering while drinking, which turned out to be something that I knew a lot about by the time I left teaching.
And there you have it. Amanda?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I digress. This specific episode, it's interesting. Like, I think in a way, I'm almost the most guest director of directors. Like, it was the first season of the Pitt, but also that was the 4th episode that season that I directed. So I didn't know when I said yes to it at all what it was going to be. So it was very much, I had read the pilot, and I knew that the show was special, and I did not expect it to be, right? Like, oh, John Wells has a medical show. You're like, oh, okay, I know what that is. You know, cool. Shoots in LA. I like to work at home. Sure, you know. And then I read it, was like, oh, yeah, you know. And then I very luckily got to be a substantial part of season 1, but this season especially, like this episode, we really worked towards, like as a company, pretty much the entire season, building towards the mass shooting and how to produce it and what we would do. And I don't know what to say except that I'm just honored to have the luck of the draw, basically. I mean, it wasn't luck, you know, John Wells knew what he was doing, but you know, it's lucky.
Yeah, it's good. Janus?
Coercion, mainly. Partly coercion. No, not really. I got a call from my reps asking if I was interested in working on a Star Wars show, and I was like, I don't know. I don't really, never considered myself a director in that universe. And they were all like, yeah, but it's Star Wars, you got to do it. It'll be good for you, good for your CV, money, big explosions. You learn everything about all that stuff. It'll be so good. You can do another Star Wars movie maybe, or Marvel. I don't know. So I was like, and then they said, well, it's Tony Gilroy's doing it. And I had just finished a feature film at that time called All the Old Knives, which was a spy movie. Came out during COVID on Amazon. Some people watched it. A lot of people didn't watch it. And Tony's film, Michael Clayton, was like the main reference point of inspiration for me. So I was deeply into Tony and his work. When first season of Andor had not come out at this point, and everything about Star Wars is so, you know, protected. You can't even have a photo up in your office of a cast member or of a set design or anything, and no one can have physical scripts. So the deal was, say yes, you can't read anything, first season's not out. And Tony said, and I said, look, I don't know much about Star Wars. I'm not like a fanboy. Yeah, I know the films, I've seen it, I've got kids, you know, I've taken them to the cinema. And he said, good. Don't watch any of that stuff. We're doing something else. We're doing Ken Loach's version of Star Wars. And I was like, okay, all right, now I'm interested. And then he said, look, we're trying to actually, you know, use the brand to talk about contemporary issues, to talk about authoritarianism and resistance, and gave me the whole sort of backdrop of what the Andor universe was going to try and do. And I said, look, I'm going to call Stellan Skarsgård, who's a friend of mine that I've worked with on another project, and see what he says. And he's like, yeah, call Stellan. And Stellan was like, yeah, it's really good. He should come on board. And I haven't regretted that decision for a second. It was everything that he promised it would be. So there we go.
Great. Ally?
I got tricked into doing my episode. I had done, and I'm very glad I was, but I had done an episode in the previous season of Black Mirror called Joan is Awful. And when they had sent me that script, I was like, why are they sending me a Black Mirror script? Like, I don't do anything spooky. I'm like, I can't do anything like that. And they were like, no, they want to do a dark comedy. And so I did Joan, and I had such a blast with that team. And then Charlie was like, would you do another one in the next season? I don't have a script yet, but I have an idea, and it'll be another dark comedy. And I was like, for sure, yeah. Like, and also like, you want to do something with Charlie because you're like, what weird part of our terrible future is he going to predict next? I guess I should be on the like front lines of knowing what that is. And then, so I signed on, and we like started prep, and the script wasn't done yet. It had been a much more comedic idea at the beginning of its inception and its life. And then I got the script, and it was just so beautiful, and such a beautiful portrait of this couple, and their sort of love and connection up against this really terrible system. And I don't know, I feel like I've found so much in it in terms of just so many people being crushed by so many terrible systems right now. You don't have to look very far. And it was just about going, okay, of course it's about like a futuristic brain chip, but also everyone around me in this country is making really hard medical decisions based on money, which is strange for me because as a Canadian, I grew up with universal health care. And so it was just about going, well, this is already happening, maybe not this exact piece of technology. And it was about just, I got really excited about finding like the honesty within the sci-fi world.
Yeah. Let me stay with you for a little bit because I thought that was really interesting. That show could have been a disaster. So,
Yeah.
I mean, if you just really just read it, there's so many ways to fuck that up. But what you did was you navigated, and I'm curious as to how and how much you thought about this. You navigated the comedy by keeping just the core of the relationship always solid. So you could have some things that were a little broader exist in that same world. Yeah. So was that something you were always tracking and thinking about? I've got to stick to this reality?
Yeah, I think that, like, again, Charlie asked me to do it because I love a tonal tightrope. I really am
Total
only interested.
tightrope. That's a
I'm
technical
really
term
only,
you've learned here.
Interested in things that can either like fall off one side or the other if you're not careful. Charlie is also just such a comedic writer. Charlie Brooker, if anyone doesn't know who I'm referencing, is the creator of Black Mirror. But he started in comedy, and we really share a sense of humor, and it was important to us to be like, well, yeah, what is the lifeline for this couple? It's how they make each other laugh and how charmed they are by each other. And we were like, we never want to take that away from them because we're taking so much away from them. And so it was also just about embracing the specificity of voice of these two incredible comedic actors who are also great dramatic actors, but like Rashida and Chris are incredibly funny and incredibly, just skilled at comedy and also walking that tonal tightrope. And I think the thing about tone and not going too far into the comedy or into the saccharine or any kind of extreme that you could potentially go or many ways that you can fuck it up. It's just about making sure you're always checking in at every step. So it's like on the page, maybe that seems like it's too far, but then when it's in like someone's mouth who's very charming, like Chris O'Dowd, it's actually, we can get away with a little bit more, and vice versa. Like, that felt like it worked in rehearsals, but now that we're in the real space, like, I think you just always have to be willing to check in with yourself about tone and have conversations about, are we towing the line or have we crossed a line? And then you also get another chance in the edit, and you get another chance, and I think it's just about always recalibrating. And another reason why doing Black Mirror is so great, it's like you do get to do it like your own film. Like it really is, you get to be there all the way through. I've done episodic as well, and you sometimes get kicked out a little bit earlier in the process. So here I had a chance all the way to the end to be able to be like, did I fuck up? And ask people. So.
Well, you didn't.
Thank you.
Lucia, let's go to you because I love things that are here. I love shows that celebrate our community of Los Angeles. And so with Hacks and with the studio for that, it just reinvigorates our desire. So with all your locations, how do you actually choose them, and what was the most difficult?
Well, yes, we have shot all now 5 seasons of Hacks here in LA.
With some peaks in Las Vegas.
A couple, like a week, pretty much a week a season in Vegas, but just exteriors. And we bring our crew, by the way.
That's nice.
Yeah. I mean, not every single person, but mostly everybody. But yeah, I mean, in terms of we have an amazing locations team that has been with us from the beginning. And, I think the thing that is, the technical answer of how do we make those decisions is oftentimes, like people don't always like talking about it, but like the pairings, it's like the block shooting and the pairings and
what works with what.
Yeah, what works with what. And so for us, I think, we really like, we have a very beautiful budget for a comedy, not as high as others, but very good for us. And we really try to put all the money on the screen. So we're constantly like considering, like, because we do block shoot, like, you know, what are our big pieces? What are our big show locations that we want to be prioritizing? And then what can work, you know, in the pairings. And
are you doing this because you're writing as well? Are you doing
Yes,
this in the writer's room? Or already
no, this is more as just a showrunner. But yeah, no, when we're scouting and prepping, that's really kind of when we're like considering that stuff. Sometimes we're in love with a location and we're like, this has to be our location. I'm trying to think about this season, what if we had one that was, we had a scene that was on the beach, and that was tough because it was right around the fires, and so the location we originally wanted to have wasn't available to us because of you know, of course, the Malibu fires, and so then that ended up pushing to like much later. That ended up being like an additional.
But you still went back. You didn't go south or find a.
No, we found another location very close by, but wasn't our original location. So that one, I guess, would be our hardest location. Was that the question? The hardest one?
Yeah, that was. I hate beaches anyway. It's always impossible.
Yes.
The equipment, just walking is.
Yeah.
I mean.
And our Deborah Los Angeles mansion, the Pink Mansion, unfortunately did burn in the Altadena fires, which was a tragedy because there's so many beautiful things that had been shot at that home over the last 100 years. And that was really sad. We had luckily wrapped it out 6 or 7 days prior, something crazy. Like it was very, very soon after. And it was really tragic because it was a beautiful home. And we had shot so much in Altadena. That was actually one of our main anchor locations because we shot in that house so often this season 4. And so there were a lot of locations that, sadly aren't with us. And I mean, if there's any consolation, it's you know, like a place that as long as we ever have the power to say where we're going to be shooting, we are definitely staying in LA, and I'd love to return to Altadena, especially because that has been such a warm community to the show.
That would be great. I'm sure that would welcome that. Let's stay in LA for a little bit with Amanda, but not about LA. I'm super curious as to the choreography and the rehearsal of all that medical. Having done ER along with others on this panel, you know, we had some time because there was talking in between where they were just talking, but it was medical all day long. And I'm assuming in continuity too. Talk to us about that process of rehearsal and putting together the show that at least appears to be in continuity.
We shoot the show entirely in continuity, except for when we go to the exterior ambulance bay or the like exterior Pittsburgh, like when they basically get to the hospital, go to the helicopter pad or leave at the end of the shift is the only
So
time.
just as there's blood on the floor, you just keep adding more.
You just keep adding more.
It's just later. Oh gosh, it's great.
Our production designer, Nina, created these amazing blood mats for episode 12 because we really would be like, just throw, like, because we actually couldn't make the set dangerous either, right? Like, I mean, there's a lot of blood on the floor in episode 12. But filming that, we shoot it all in continuity. And then sometimes what we could do is, and I think they got better at this, especially in season 2, if we were sort of like in the North Wing and they could pull some people into trauma maybe the day before, if we weren't going to be over there, if they knew to start rehearsing things. But we really, I mean, all the actors are very good, and our doctors that are there.
So you're rehearsing all the medical on the day you're shooting it?
Yes, we have real nurses are our nurses on camera on set. So they're very helpful as well. And like, that's not real, don't do that, blah, blah, blah. And then our doctors basically choreograph. They need to tell everyone, you have to be here doing this, you have to be here doing this, you have to be here doing that. And it doesn't, I mean, we shoot like 9+ pages a day. And we have to do this thing where, you know, you'd start in the morning because there's no dollies on that set. There's no stands at all. All the lighting is built into the set. So it's all handheld. We use a ZG and the B camera is always handheld. And we would just, you know, you read the words, you rehearse, and you're normally filming within like 15 minutes of call probably, or something crazy. And then
because the light is just built in.
It's just built in. You're just not doing anything. And so we actually have to take pee breaks. We'd literally, because no one ever has a break. You're just going so hard and so fast all day. At a certain point, you'd be like, okay, everyone leaves. We're like 15 minutes, everyone come back. Like that's how sort of.
Wow.
How many cameras are you running at a time?
2.
Just 2.
On episode 12, we did 3. We pulled in a third for that one because there was so much happening, and all of their crew dress in scrubs.
Just in case we nick them. In the frame,
Yeah. But
yeah. I'm assuming the boom operator has been in a lot of your episodes. They're always in mine.
They're actually very good. They're really like people stay out of the way, and we would hide like ADs, especially for background for some crazy stuff. We just hide them in
I love
there.
that. It's a real dance.
It is a real dance, but it's a lot of fun, and it's challenging. I thought of the show weirdly as easy, in that way of that, like it's built to do what it does. So you're not fighting against something. Like you're going, the stream is going the same way you are, and so in that way, it's very enjoyable and it's very pleasurable, and people are like the actors are cast. Like look at Catherine, who's playing Dana. Like she was meant to play Dana. She's perfectly cast. So you're not fighting to get a performance from her that isn't really what
you'd hope.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a lot of it's a lot of fun.
Janicza, let's go to you because I'd like to know where the writing ended and the acting started, because it all seemed to be just happening. It didn't seem like there had been any typing. So how much of that really is improvised, and how much of it did you just have a story, or it just seemed like everything was really just going on?
Like I said at the top, this is very much an existing show. I think it was the 4th season. And if anything, my only hesitation with saying yes was I'm not sure what I could offer something that doesn't really need an outsider. And
doesn't bring in a lot of outsiders either.
Exactly. I think I was the
air.
second guest director because everyone else was like already on the show or in their family. So I was like, why am I here? But with regards to the script, they felt there was a comfortability around being able to add to it, but it was. I come from the theater. That's like my home. I'm a theater kid, theater actor, theater director, first and foremost. And like my fantasy is to always be able to work sequentially if that's possible. It's rarely possible.
You would love the Pitt.
Yeah, you love that.
Probably. I definitely loved watching it. Congratulations. And so, and we were working with a kid who had, I think her only acting experience was like this news segment. So there was also wanting to make the bulk of the episode is Io, who's been on the show and is very, very seasoned, and her, who hadn't really worked before. And so while the script was very much set, we also wanted there to be this ease so that there wasn't a sense of failing or getting it wrong. And once we understood where we meant to go in every scene, it was sort of like also throw it away if it doesn't feel right in your mouth. Like I think some things, especially with her, sounded like writing. I don't work with kids that often, but when I have, I think one of our challenges is like how authentic is a child to another child or a teenager to another teenager, right? There's like the fantasy of how we can express ourselves, which is this sort of like imagined eloquence. And so wanting her to be able to add herself to it. But that set is very playful also. And I think that that's very imbued inside of it. But this episode specifically had left the world of the kitchen.
And was that fun for the crew, just to get out of the kitchen and now be in the home? Or was
I
it
think
like, where are we?
Yes and no. I think yes and no, because I had a lot of freedom. Chris gave me a lot of freedom. And in fact, I was like, you sure? And I think he showed up to set at the first take, and then I saw him walk away, and I was like, all right, well, see you at the end, I guess. But the crew had been there since the very beginning, and I think the biggest challenge really was sort of like convincing them that I meant well, and also that I had seen the show and understood it, right? So that they felt safe pushing or trying something else. But there was lots of convincing to do.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah,
we
it
make
happens
it
all the
back to that.
time. It happens all the
On
time.
the other side, Antonio, I'm super interested in how you frame things and how you make the decision. Because when you're dealing with basically a lot of talking and two people who know each other very well but don't know each other very well in the story, it's really interesting. But is that all planned? When do you cut? When you go to your close-ups? When you do those big, wide, low shots? How do you do that?
I plan a lot. I do like to plan a lot. I like to obsess about the script and ask a lot of questions to the showrunners. And my process tends to be I like to shot list. And
you like to shot list?
I really like to shot list. Yeah.
All right, aspiring director.
Because
listen to this man.
For me, it's like a jam session. I get into a room with my AD. And in this case, it was a guy who has been one of my closest friends, Thomas, Dutch guy who everybody knows is Dutch. And so Dutch and Dutch, we're just, it's like our dreamy phase. It's like, okay, well, what if we did that? Oh, and then we just kind of talk about movies we love and look at movie clips and so I like to go, okay, so then we're here and then we're here and then on the day, I give a shot list to everybody. We've timed it, and this is what we want it to be. And then, but it's the way that I do it so that when I get to set, I feel very comfortable deviating from it because I'm a little OCD. And so for me, it's like once I've done that, I get on set and I'm like, oh, this is great. I know I could do this, but if something else, presents itself, I'm going to lean into it. And the thing that I was looking at with this show and the way that I think about suspense and thrillers, especially ones that are very talky, is my job as a director is to identify where the show or the episode or the story might just be sort of losing a little bit of that suspense and then trying to figure out, well, how can I, without changing the words, inject that suspense and dread? So for instance, there was a scene in episode 1 where Aggie, played by Claire, is talking to her good friend who's the book editor back in her office in the city. It's a phone call, and it was scripted as two people talking on a phone, each one at a table. Her in the office in New York, and then Claire in her house by herself. And I was like, well, what if she's walking and she's turning off the lights in each room, and she's all alone, and we accentuate the fact that she's by herself in this big old house, and then let's put the camera outside for a second. Let's look at her through a window, just to give the sense of maybe someone's watching her. And the minute that started happening, the scene starts to sort of take this kind of weird eeriness, takes on this weird eeriness. And a scene that is two people talking that still has a coziness to it, maintains the exact amount of dread that I think it needs, because it is a suspense, because it is, you have to kind of keep the audience, remind the audience that they're always in that mode. So for me, it's, I do think a lot about the edit. I do think a lot about the shot composition and the angles and how that can inject discomfort or some sort of unsettling feeling into a moment that doesn't necessarily seem like that. But I know television, and I know that in the end, you have to kind of give a certain amount of room for the showrunner to kind of figure out how to shape something. So I'm always trying to sort of find that balance, having done both showrunning and, directing episodic and pilots. So it's always that dance, and I tend to try and only go onto a show where I really feel like creatively I'm very in sync with the writers and the showrunners, because then I just feel very safe to play and then very safe to walk away,
Yeah, and there's two of them working now, so you've got two opportunities to create showrunners. Janice, hi. I assumed, and we talked before this, that all that big sequence on the, the basically the shooting of the protesters and the stormtroopers was done on one of those big volume Mandalorian-like stages, but then you told me it was not.
No, I think, Was there a question or?
Yes. How was it done?
Okay.
And how did you
How was
accomplish
it done? No, I think that one of the joys about Andor was it was a real old school approach to filmmaking. No volumes, everything was built, everything was locations and set extensions, and I mean, it's just surprising how much you can find when you turn on the lens of trying to find Star Wars. Suddenly you're like seeing a subway station in London and think, this is pretty Star Warsy. And then you have the luxury of working on a show where, I just felt like I was riding shotgun to like the biggest bank robbery in the history of television or something. There was a lot of money, which I think. So it was like, oh, well, maybe we should go and shoot at the Opera House in Valencia for this sequence. And you can do that on a show like this. And that really frees up, obviously, a lot of imagination. I didn't take those decisions personally. There was some. I believe your friend Kathleen Kennedy was a pretty big part of that. But the whole, we took up, I don't know how big a portion of the Pinewood Studios, but, I would think the majority of Pinewood in London was engaged with doing Andor at the time. And the clip you saw in this whole sequence, that was the so-called massacre of the people of Gorman, the planet Gorman, was all built on a backlot. And the challenge there was really, the set was, I don't know, about the size of a football field or something. And it was built up to one level, and it was supposed to be 2 levels. And you walk in there and you're told, well, this is a genocide of a full planet. So we're imagining, 5,000-10,000 people have probably amassed in this plaza. And, we had, on good days, 400 extras. I think we had 3 days of 400, and then we were like down to 200, some days a little less. So you really have to develop some efficient shot listing. And we looked a lot at football riots, and we looked at, there's this great French film called Athena, which some might have seen, about riots in the suburbs of Paris, where they just like do the most crazy things, and they had a lot of fireworks and stuff. So we obviously, we invented this thing about smoke canisters and had green smoke, so that would fill up the frame, and then we would just stack people, and had the best first AD in the world. If anyone ever gets a chance to work with Sean Guest, who is an acclaimed member of this organization, I've never seen anyone wrangle extras the way he could do that, and that was just a big part of getting that to work out. But first time I remember walking onto that set with my DOP and Sean, the first AD, and we were looking at that space. We were like, how are we gonna pull this off? Because Tony Gilroy just writes laborious, explosion here, this hotel blows up, 5 killer robots come out, 1,000 people get killed, But yeah, with good planning, and on a show like Star Wars, you get, I think we did about 3 or 4 months of prep. For
Just
3
for that
episodes.
episode?
We were shooting in tandem with other teams, so we would prep and then we would shoot some, and then we got a little time to prep something else, and there was 3 teams shooting in tandem for those episodes. So it was a big, it was a big operation. Another little anecdote, and then I'll stop talking to leave the floor. But when you're only building a set up to the first floor, and you're supposed to have 2 floors, and you have 2 to 3 cameras working at all times, and you have close-ups and wides, etc. What you quickly realize is you get into a hell of a lot of rotoscoping. So, again, working on a show like this, I'm just amazed with how, the art of good VFX, and when you have the best in town to do that kind of stuff, how much you can actually do. And we were just waving our cameras around, not really paying attention to how much it was going to cost. And all the producers would come, okay, can we please not shoot a little less down? We're like, oh no, heroic close-ups a little bit from down here. That's the thing.
But not too long ago, it was always green screen. You got to bring in the green screen for that. But now they just rotoscope it all, right?
Yeah, it was a lot. Yeah. Most of it was just rotoscoping. I mean, there would be greens all around, and sometimes you'd be directing something, and then there'd be like a big truck with a green screen kind of backing into the shot, and you'd be, some VFX guy or in the corner was like, "Yeah, we're getting a little too much reflection of the water over there." Flag that off.
That's interesting.
So it was in that way. It was. I don't know that I'm ever going to work on something of that scale again. It was quite impressive to see.
Well, I hope you do, because it was amazing.
Thank you.
Liza, I was going to ask you about the mansion, but seeing the clip, I just want to ask you about those two actors who once run West Wing, where they have a really established relationship, where people know them, and yet now they're playing totally different characters in a different show with a completely different relationship to each other. But I'm sure behind the scenes, they're just talking like they always talk. So what was that like, and how did you make sure that they were no longer CJ and company?
Well, it was amazing because they're both a dream. And I guess they're dreams. They're each a dream.
They're each a dream.
And I guess it's also an important moment to really pay tribute to the first AD, Adam Escott, who could also be the greatest of all time. Yeah. So
there's going to be a battle for the greatest AD here, I can tell.
And the reason I say that is that when we shot that episode, Allison was on Palm Royale in first position, and Brad was on the sad abortion show, which is called The Handmaid's Tale, in first position. And
also known as the sad abortion show.
So actually the hardest thing was not creative, creatively, they're very good at acting. They knew how to be different characters. Allison in particular had been established on season 2, but it was just literally very hard to be in the same place at the same time. And that is a real tribute to Adam Escott, who is also such a genius that if it rained, it was going to ruin the episode. And he figured out how to make it rain at the correct time. And and that was actually the challenge there. And I think that it appears to me, at least, that their rapport and their longstanding respect for each other just helps them, and that it's not hard for them to be different than they were on that show. And I guess another thing that I really like about the show is I find it wonderful to watch the writer and the show grow, and the way that she actually, I feel like sometimes it works really well for a show to establish the characters, and then the characters just keep being like that. Mm-hmm. And without saying anything too revealing, all of these characters really, we're doing season 4 now, and they are all growing in ways that I didn't expect. And and I think people like seeing the reference to the West Wing. The writer worked on the West Wing. Some of the other people also worked on the West Wing. But on season 1, she didn't want a Steadicam a lot because she wanted to be her own show, And so I think she found that, and then she was happy to have some more reference to the original. And I wished that we could do even more with it. Like this season, I wanted to take the Steadicam and Brad and Allison and just go walk across a big pile of rubbish and have them talk fast, and we would call it the East Wing.
I got that. But you resisted. Okay, Lesli. So you started talking about Robert De Niro. Mm-hmm. First television role? No. First starring television role?
Yes. Yeah.
I can't imagine that. He hadn't been on any series or show before this?
No, he had not. And he was very invested in this.
He didn't do any Robert De Niro stuff.
No.
And how did you accomplish that? I mean, he created a really nuanced, subtle,
Thank you.
small. I mean, he's done that in some films, but it's very interesting to see how controlled he could be. So I just assumed that was you.
Well, it's a collaborative process. But, Antonio, when you were talking, I work very similarly. I plan everything so I can be free. in the moment. And, when I met with Bob, and we spent a lot of time talking, and once we were connected in terms of that creative process, he definitely could not deal with the idea of any other director coming in. Once we connected, it was like, if we were going to do this, I had to do everything. There was no question about it. He would not. And in fact, the way we shot this, we cross-boarded everything. And thank God I had the most amazing AD, Michael Lerman, and
Who will win? Most amazing
unit production
AD.
manager, Amy Herman, whose nickname is the Herminator. And they were Herman and Lerman. So it felt like they were like a personal injury lawyer team, like on the back of bus stops and things like that. But working with Bob, literally we spent hours talking about politics. We spent hours talking about the character. And, with a political thriller, you have a lot of plot. But plot is plot. That's the engine that moves you through. If you don't have characters that you're invested in, none of it matters. And developing each of those characters, was really exciting. And, a lot of the cast Bob had worked with before. I've worked with Jesse Plemons. This was my second time with him. And, the cast was amazing. Angela Bassett as the president. Again, that was before Kamala was running. And Connie Britton and Lizzie Kaplan. I mean, the whole cast was extraordinary. And he was on the set the whole time.
Really?
That old-fashioned, he was there. And again, he just would go deep. He wanted to always be going deep, always asking the questions. And we had a lot of conversations in the development process. But the big thing, jumping from hour to hour, like when you are in episode 3 and then episode 6 in the same day, keeping that continuity together just on a purely practical level, where are you moment by moment? That was really important.
Did he ever do Travis Bickle just for you?
What's that?
Travis Bickle, his character in Taxi Driver? No, he never did that? I would ask him to do that for day one.
Well, we had...
And then he'd say, any director but Paris could do the show.
We had a day on the set when we were shooting a huge scene that's in the first hour when this attack or the 0-day event has happened. Banking has gone down, internet, electricity, power. There have been 3,200 deaths because of planes, and he goes down to a site in Lower Manhattan. And there may be 500 people there. And, there are people claiming, this is fake. There are people panicked. It's a subway site. There are people still underground. And it was a huge setup. And he gives this speech, which is so incredibly powerful about how we're not listening to each other. This is not American. And it got picked up. Somebody recorded it. A passerby, as if he was giving the speech in real life, and it was all over. And of course, we're saying this was not Bob speaking, because at that point, needless to say, he's very outspoken politically about what he feels about this administration, we did try to not ever deal with Republican, Democrat at all. Yeah. This was not a left-wing, right-wing situation.
Yeah, there was still a little bit of that.
Yeah, it's hard to get away from that, but we did try to show both sides. Yeah.
I want to talk about difficult times. And I mentioned this to you guys before, when we teach the first-time directors class, we always talk about how it may happen that your life will happen when you're directing, that there'll be something that will take you away from it or distract you. I was doing a limited series and my husband collapsed once. I didn't go twice, and I had to fly back from New York. And he ended up all right, but my first AD, who was an accomplished director, Drew Rosenberg, stepped up and did a couple of days for me using my plans, and we got through it. I'm just wondering if you guys during these episodes have ever had the experience when life interrupted your best laid plans. This can be anybody.
I had to get 2 eye surgeries during
2 eye surgeries?
I had a cyst on my eyelid, and they were like, if you don't deal with it, it could get bigger and you might not be able to open your eye. And I was like, well, I need my eyes. And so I went and
were you
got it.
shooting?
I got it removed they found somewhere that would do it on the Saturday before we went to camera on the Monday.
Oh my God.
And then so I was wearing an eye patch for the first week of shooting. And that's how I met Rashida and Chris. So that was nice. And then something went wrong with it and I had to go back again. We had 1 week where we were shooting like a Tuesday to a Saturday. So then I had one Monday off and I went and had it basically fixed and had to come back with another eye patch. So
On a different eye?
no, but everyone was like, if it's like you were faking and you swapped it and you mixed up.
And you just made this your look, right?
But
Just
it was
sort of
a
pirate.
really interesting thing to be like so visibly like, I'm not doing well and have to still be like, but it's okay, everyone. I've got it under control. But it was interesting because obviously the episode I was working on is about like the healthcare system being a hellscape and ruining people's lives and late stage capitalism. And I was just like, don't mind me, just getting my eye surgery and then going right back to set because that's what we do. I don't know, but it was interesting too to see like the crew be very helpful and show up for me. And on the last day, they all wore eye patches.
Oh, I love that.
So cute.
I love that.
I would say if we're thinking about talking to first-time directors, in that way, directing is all consuming. Like when you're in prep, it's taking all of your focus, all of your time, all of your energy. You sort of disappear from your life.
So true.
And that's why sometimes actually shooting on location is just easier than being at home because you're gone from your life anyway. So you're not disappointing people basically, which is hard. You know, if you're home, we did the Pitt for 8 months here in LA, and my boyfriend would take photos of me. I would be passed out on our couch. I'd just come home and I just thought like, I'm in LA, it's easy. And I would just be like funniest, silliest positions, just unconscious, sober. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
Just out cold. And then of course, because you're waking up at 5 a.m. So it is that thing that just doing this job takes everything. It takes everything physically, it takes everything mentally. And that's why it's wonderful because I just like for the first time in my life feel like I'm not insane because I get to direct, you know. But there is just the job itself is, you know, it's a lot.
Something. Janus, do you have something?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to kind of just plant the seeds of a political conversation I think we really need to have, because as much as we're privileged doing what we love and we get to do this at a very high level and you know, we can't whinge about it, at the same time, you know, you do live like a sailor. You're away from home. I have 4 kids. I never see my kids. I don't know how my wife is coping with it. Actually, that's a lie. I just brought my 3-year-old here from Denmark for 7 months to do post on a movie that we could just as well be doing in Copenhagen, just because someone doesn't want to put up the cash to do post somewhere else. My kid doesn't see his mom for 7 weeks. He's 3 years old. And that's just part of the game. And, you know, you got to be careful of how you sign up your contracts and stuff like that. So I don't want to sit here and whinge, but I do wonder if our business has become so squeezed also in this department that we're actually not looking at each other as human beings anymore. Like on my last feature film, I went down with COVID. There was no way they would let me ride that out and come back to set. I was directing from my hotel room on an iPhone with my AD on set. I saved that production company millions because they would have had to hiatus. They wouldn't have been able to bring A-list actors back for months. And we're under this kind of pressure constantly as directors. Actors are too, et cetera, but they might have more leverage. I just think our industry has come to a place where, guys, it can't go on, you know? It's crazy.
Late stage capitalism.
Yeah, I'll bring it right back to Black Mirror.
It could be. That's a great. Leslie?
I have to say, When I first started directing, I would worry about everything equally. And things I couldn't control. Will it rain tomorrow? Well, I can worry all night long, and if it's going to rain, it's going to rain. So I feel like I've gotten better at dealing with that being an opportunity rather than a problem. So I would encourage someone who's starting to stay in their own center, as much as you can. If you have to walk away from set for 5 minutes, go to the bathroom and just take a breath and get back in your center. And what is the story about? Why are we telling this story? But I think it's trying to keep that channel open with your instincts and not let fear and panic take over. Because fear and panic is the killer of all good instincts.
Well, did you
And
ever?
it's also fucking not fun.
Fear
The
and
more
panic is
you're
bad.
in your body, the more you can be with your actors and be with your crew. And, I think I'll probably paraphrase this wrongly, but Truffaut had this great statement: the secret of good directing is knowing exactly what you want, but having no ego about giving it up the second anyone else has a better idea.
Yeah, that's
And I
certainly
think
what Antonio
when
was
you're
saying.
more in your center, you can hear those ideas.
Right.
So I would encourage someone, I wish I had known,
Yeah.
some of that when I was starting out and
So just before I move on, does anyone else have a personal story of triumph over adversity? That's
Oh, well,
what-
I had on this show, I shot for 103 days.
Oh, that was all adversity. Huh?
Oh my God. I mean, it was
It was a lot.
yes, it was long. And it was keeping the energy up, like when you're on day 63 and you're like, oh my God, we're on day 63. I've got,
That's what it must be like being in a long movie, Lucia.
Yeah, I during this episode, I had so many bruises on my body. I had to go to the doctor, and I didn't really have enough blood in my body
Oh, wow.
from anxiety. Thank you.
Yeah.
And that's pales in comparison to previous season. I gave birth basically almost, I started going to contractions like 3 or so hours after I left set. And I wasn't able to go back to set the next day. And so
Because you'd given birth.
I was giving birth. I was in the process of giving birth, which I directed from a
While in labor?
a monitor in between contractions.
no one can top that.
And then
Yeah, who's going to top that? Come
can
on.
all go
yeah,
home.
no, I did it by myself because my husband had to go and direct for me.
Oh, my God.
Because he's the other director.
Director on
yeah,
your show.
so
He had to cover.
he had to go, and then you could also see him. He was also acting in the scene, and so you could see him in the scenes. He's like shaking a little bit because he knows his wife is in labor and he's directing and acting. But it was okay because my parents were in the house, so it was going to be fine. I wasn't by myself, but
Antonio, you can top that.
Wow.
I was in labor and I was crazy. No, I can't top that. I can't top any. I mean, I all I can say is I agree with what Leslie's saying in the sense that first-time filmmaker advice that doesn't, because nothing I can say tops that or any sort of thing like that. But I would say that as my wife has pointed this out because she's been with me a long time. My wife is normally the editor, my editor on things, and so we worked very closely. And so we did 2 features together, and she edited The Staircase. She was sort of the supervising editor of that, and she's pointed out to me that I've become more at ease about it, about sort of the way that I go about things. And I think that I was always filled with a lot of fear and suspicion and paranoia when I started. Like, there is this thing that I think filmmakers have this idea of a director as someone that knows everything and that they are the captain of the ship and it's them that's doing the thing and they have to know and they have to have an answer for everything. And there's this, I remember my first feature, my second feature, there's this fear that someone's trying to take over when they give you a suggestion. And when I realized, one, that they are giving their opinion and that you engage in that and that you could end up with a better idea, take their idea, or that, I completely blanked. But basically, yeah, I've kind of gotten to the point where I think filmmaking is meant to be fun. And when it isn't, you have to step back and try and understand why you're doing it and make sure that you're not making sacrifices. We were talking about this with my ID today with Dutch, because somebody I know, his relationship with his wife is really suffering. He doesn't see his kids. He's not home. And, sometimes the perspective there is like, man, these people, like, they're really bringing me down. And it's like, no, those are the people that unconditionally love you. Everybody else is kind of extraneous. And so having perspective about that is probably the thing that I've learned the most, but that's only come with time.
Well, let's go to the flip side then. How do you bring the joy? I mean, we obviously all love doing this. How do you bring that to your set and help people, to elevate? I'm especially interested in you with basically strangers that you're working with. How do you instill some sort of feeling that this is all worth doing together? Come on, guys. How do you do it?
I was going to tell another story, not a good story.
You can tell that. Then we'll go to the good story.
I'll tell my bad story. This is not to top you because I think yours is very good, but I think I think mine's like a bummer also. But mine's a bummer. No, yours is like joy, life. It was right after, this is my first job, like sort of inside of COVID or right outside of COVID. So it's like at the top of 2021. And we're wearing PPE, and remember we had like the clear mask on top of the face mask, and some people had gloves on, and there are people giving you COVID tests that you were like, what was your job before? What job? You know so much science, kind of. What's happening? But it was like super distressing, right? And anyways, I was on this job, and I was in the middle of prep, and I looked at my phone. And I was like, is that what that says? And then I called, and my family's from Panama. I'm from Panama. My stepfather had passed away. And I was in the middle of the last day of prep, and we had to shoot the next day. And I thought, am I supposed to tell them that my dad died? No, because they will all, if I tell them, then something in my face is going to show this kind of like softness or tenderness, and then they won't trust me. And I can't go to Panama anyways because it's this like moment of peak pandemic, and I can't go there. So I didn't say anything, and I really struggled. I really struggled through that. I think I had like 2 or 3 weeks of shooting, and I really struggled for like a week and a half of it.
You didn't say anything?
I told no one, And then recently, I was with a friend, or one of the lead actors of this show. We have a friend in common, and our friend, while like very drunk, was like, "God, you were such an asshole on that job," and I was like, "I was," and the review back was that I'd been a real jerk, and I was so bummed out because I was like, I didn't even tell anyone how I felt, and I thought I was doing a great job of masking. And I think the lesson I'd gotten from it was that I really related to what you were saying, Antonio, of not being comfortable with stating where I was at if it didn't feel like it looked like strength, because I'd been reared to always have an answer. I'd been reared to be really uncomfortable with just being honest if I felt a little bit off, especially with like not knowing, right? Like I'd been reared to be really uncomfortable with not knowing, that to not know meant that I didn't belong there. And as a guest director, so often I think I find that so much of that job for me is like, some portion of it is proving that you're supposed to be there. And by the time you've proven that you're supposed to be there, you're like, well, great, we have a day and a half left to finish. Thank you for having me. This has been an incredible energy. It was just, I think that what I got from it was that I would like to, in my own work, at least create an environment where it's okay to be off, and it's okay to not know, and it's okay to have bad days, because people might still think you're an asshole, even if you think you're good at it. And apparently I wasn't, so.
Yeah, and I've seen the opposite happen. We had a director on a show I was doing whose father died, and he was a very public person, so everyone knew. And we said, you don't have to shoot. We can figure it out. And she wanted to shoot. And there was so much love that came from the crew and so much support. And it was almost like people wanted just to focus on getting her through the day,
Right.
and just being a partner as the best partner they could be in their jobs. So it's interesting. I wonder how different it would have been if she could have concealed it. Would the same thing have happened, especially with a female director? Would they have judged that? So it's a really interesting question. Ally, you've got to lift us up, though.
Me?
Yes, I can't. You must bring some positivity and joy to your set.
You're like
And
old eye patch over
You
here?
must exactly. You must have some techniques you use as a director to brighten the dark days.
I do. I do think that like we have such a funny, absurd job, and everything when you're like, I think the poop should be this consistency. Like it's just like it's hard, I think, to take this job too seriously, even when it. Of course, we have to take aspects of it super seriously. I think we have a responsibility when we have such a big platform that I think all of us share. But I do think I try to approach. I'm also lucky. I work predominantly in comedy and dramedy, but just make things funny, even if there's tension. Like the number of times a crane operator's been like, hair and makeup's that way, sweetie. And I have to be like, well, I'm actually the director, but you don't have to respect me. We just have to get to lunch. But like, I don't know, just like not getting worked up about things, like making things okay and making things a joke. And if tensions are rising, trying to remember that people are looking at you, and you don't have to have every answer, but I think you definitely need to remain calm, and I think you have to set a good example of being a good communicator and a good asker of things. So I think really showing people from the get-go that it's okay to have conversations about things that you might disagree about, and that you can then be totally fine at the end of that conversation and be like, what are we gonna get for lunch? I guess I talk about lunch a lot, I'm realizing. But like, I think, just like making sure your sense of humor is intact and that you also are surrounding yourself with people who have a similar like taste and approach to you. I also think something I would encourage everyone to do, and I'm just going to take this opportunity to say this because I'm not often around this many directors, but on every set that I'm on, I bring on a paid mentee, a young female filmmaker of color, and because the stats in our industry are abysmal in terms of representation. But I also think giving access makes a set more joyful. Like teaching while you have access and giving it back and demystifying as you go, having someone on your set that's like actively learning and having a crew and a cast know that, I think is a really magical thing because it just makes everyone like want to give information and answer questions. And I think, when there's someone who doesn't have as much experience as you and is allowed to be in the space that you're in charge of, I think it's really nice to see things through the eyes of someone that is like learning, and I would encourage everyone to mentor on their sets if they have the ability and to advocate to do that, because I think that giving or sending the elevator back down makes what you're doing very joyful, I find.
Beautiful. More joy. I demand more joy. How else do you bring joy?
I feel like it's really important how you set up the world. And you know, I don't feel like it's hard to bring joy because I actually feel it. I love doing this job. Even on the bad days, I love doing the job. And so, you know, learn everyone's name on day one. You know, try to create a good working environment. You know, and it makes a huge difference. At the end of the day, go to the trucks and say thank you to people. You know, I think it's small things that actually create a really good working environment. And certainly I've worked on some heavy stuff, and those are the funniest sets ever.
100%.
It's like, honestly,
the funnier it is.
It is. So, I deal with a lot of things with humor, and it really helps. So there's a camaraderie
dancing.
of how, yeah.
I like to deal with things with dancing. I find that helpful.
Well, yeah. And I've been
And
mentoring.
you're a
for
dancer. I'm not a
35 years.
dancer. It's funny when I do dancing.
Oh no, I like that. I like that, Liza. But mentoring, I agree. Ally, I've been mentoring for a billion years. Paris, you've been doing that. And I don't know what it's like to be on a set without having someone there. And even better, when you see those people having huge careers.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Amanda, you wanted to jump in? You were going to say something?
I was just going to say, being a good boss, which is basically what you're saying, is you really, there's so many people on your set who are just coming to work. And if you're being a good boss, they're having a good day, and then they go home, and then they're in a good mood when they go home, and then they have a better life. Like, it's just, you're the CEO of your company. Right. While you're director in so many ways, and you're really responsible for like the emotional well-being of your whole crew. And I take that part of my job very seriously, and have worked actually hard on that side of my job, which is to be a good boss, not just like an artist, right? Mm-hmm. So,
and for me, it assists me in doing that people are actually really good at their jobs, and it's very weird what people's jobs are, and they're really good at that thing. And like, it is actually kind of miraculous, which I think is helpful in bringing the joy and having it be real, so that like what's coming through on your face is real because they're good at stuff.
I love that. And you can structure your show. So how do you bring the joy?
Well, part of it is, I think, especially because, it is a comedy and we really try to do some hard comedy, is protecting, well, of course, so much of is like, I think for me, literally being friends with like people that like ordinarily you're like, maybe I know your name, maybe I don't know your name, but I mean, on season 5 of the show, I know these people very well. They're literally my friends. They are my family. Sorry. I mean, I love my family, but they also are my family. And so I'm sorry, like I have handshakes with a lot of them, and that really helps in the morning when it's very, very early. But in terms of like how to like also make that environment, because like if your crew is not having fun, making a comedy with a crew that's cranky is not going to work. And so also, we do our best to like protect our actors so that they can have fun and feel loose at times. Like, it is a very scripted show, and I'd say 90% of what's on screen is scripted, but you want to be able to also protect it so you can have a fun run at the end of the take where they get to improvise a bit and have fun. And we don't really cross shoot as much as I'd like. But I try to make it up by allowing the actors to have one really just for them, especially with the people who I know love improvising. And then that stuff often does end up in the cut. So it is really like a boss thing in terms of like your relationship with the crew and making sure that the crew feels comfortable, but also on a technical level, like allowing your performers to feel comfortable and to feel like they can be their funniest, because that's like my favorite thing is getting to watch actors be as funny as they are, and they aren't always. I mean, it's sometimes hard for people to feel the freedom to just let their skills flourish and like to just do their funny. And so we really work really hard on literally scheduling that.
Scheduling the funny.
Yeah.
There's one thing the thing that has always worked is I cook for people. Mm-hmm. I invite people over. I invite people over on the staircase. I would get home at 3 a.m. and I would start baking a pie, and I would start slow cooking a pork butt, and I would have people over the next day, and I would serve them food, and I would cook for them, and I'd be standing by the grill, and then like everybody's like, "Hey, can you get me 2 more hot dogs?" I'm like, "Okay, right," and I'm just sort of just in that mode, and it. Just socializing and being together in a chill environment with good food and good company and bullshitting and drinks, and it's just it really brings home that it is a family. And when you kind of go, look, the hierarchy thing is what it is, and there is a reason why it is the way it is on a set, but the reality is like look, we're all human beings and we're all here. And if everyone feels invested in this thing, if everyone feels like this thing is their own thing, it will be better. Yeah. And so like you want everybody to feel like they have a piece of this. And so however you can bring that family, and for me, it goes back to just being at home, cooking for people and serving them and bullshitting and having a good time when you're not on set.
Great. And now they're waving and I have just a few minutes left, but I just did want to do a lightning round because this sort of to pull this all together, because there's a reason why we direct and it's probably slightly different for each of us. So if you were to answer the question, why do you direct as opposed to anything else you could do in the world, what would it be? And what do I have? 4 minutes left? All right. So I'm going to start at the far end. Why do you direct? In short.
In short, I just have always lived in my head a lot. I grew up in a sort of isolated part of Canada, and I don't know. I always just like lived in stories and books and movies, and when I'm alone, I'm really interested in how I envision things, and I think. I don't know. It's just like all I want to do. I don't know. I love to write and direct, and I like to see something through to the very end, I think. And and just see my perspective in the world in that format. I don't think young queer women's perspectives are very common in film and TV, and so to me, it feels important to try to keep going, I guess.
Keep it going. Janus?
I think for all my life, I was trying not to be an artist. Like my dad's a painter. He always said to me, "Don't be an artist. You're never going to make a living." And I was a painter for a long time secretly, and my paintings weren't very good. They all looked like my dad's. So, no, but literally. I started directing at a very late age. I started out in documentary film. And the moment I picked up a camera, this was the wonderful days of like DV cam, you just had a PD 150 smack in a camera. I had a good mic and a couple of clip mics and there you go. And I understood immediately, I think because I'd grown up around paintings, I had a visual language. And it was such a, I was just injected with some sort of truth of my own desires and passions and ways of seeing that it became an obsession. And I think the moment when everything, and this goes back to some of like also film theory of those people that know Vertov and people like that, once the camera is possessed and everything is possessed in front and behind and in front of the camera, around a certain cinematic truth, there's a sense of penetration of the world. And I'm sorry if those terms sound sexistic. They're not meant to, but I'm sure you know what I mean. That I can't let that go. That's an eternal hunt. Or desire to be in that moment, for good and bad, I guess.
Beautiful. Amanda?
I was a photographer, like from being a 14-year-old, I picked up a camera and I photographed punk rock bands and went on tour. And I thought I went to art school, studied photography, fine art photography. I had a career for almost 20 years as a photographer. Thought I would die a photographer. Like truly, and I still am a photographer, but when I directed my first film, I realized like I had found something that actually used my whole brain and used my whole heart. And I think if I didn't start directing, like I don't know if I'd be here. Like I would have just, I think, lost myself in some depression, or it's like the thing that actually uses everything that I have, which keeps me alive, and I'm deeply grateful for it.
Wow. Liza?
I think for me, it starts with that I really love what actors are capable of, and the transmission of emotion that people can do is really moving to me. I think also the thing that I have to give to the world is maybe unique to helping people do that towards their best work and towards something which is meaningful. And I think it's, I started to say a privilege for us to have meaningful work, but I actually think it's a right that is mostly denied. And for me, that's where that meaning is located.
Leslie?
I love stories. I love telling stories. I love watching other people's stories. And I think it teaches us something about the human condition. And I love that we get to explore that with actors, and we have to create a safe space for them so they can show us something about the human condition and human emotion. And that process, that crazy process with a huge group of people, is so incredible. And I do feel grateful, even on the bad days, that I get to do this for a job. They actually pay me for it. That's crazy. I mean, I was a modern dancer for 12 years, and choreographed all over the world. And I love that everyone comes from these different backgrounds. And I was told a story that I felt like I had to pass on, and I knew it wasn't dance. And that's the only reason I ever directed. But the minute I walked on that set the first time, I was like, oh, this is the next chapter. So I just feel incredibly grateful. And I love other people's stories too. I want to hear lots of stories.
Great. Antonio?
Well, I started making films when I was 13, and my first short film was called Puberty. And so for me, I came to filmmaking with this notion of write what you know. And for me, it really started with the idea of, well, this is the best way to sort of understand yourself, to figure yourself out. And I think, as I've grown, there is a therapeutic aspect to filmmaking for me. There's also the sort of understanding people and understanding why people do what they do. But I think the thing that has brought me back to it more and more, I realize, is being around people all working towards the same goal. And I think that what's very special about film is it is the most collaborative art form. It is really the only collaborative art form. And if you think about any one shot, all the things that have to happen at the exact right moment in order for that shot to be something great is magical. Because all of these people, all doing something different, all separately, have to be in sync at that exact moment. The camera has to be here, the actor has to be doing this, the light has to be doing that. All of it has to happen exactly at the right moment. And when it happens, there is literally nothing that I can imagine more special and magical and exciting. And I think ultimately I keep coming back because that feeling happens multiple times a day. I mean, that's an incredible thing. And so I think ultimately it started off with puberty and now I'm here.
Janicza?
I want to see it. Thank you.
Yeah,
Will you send me a link? Okay, great. I'm the daughter of immigrants. I'm first generation. My parents really wanted me to be a doctor. I am not a doctor. The greatest gift that I got from this country was the ability to dream and to dream big and to dream outside of the edges of what I knew. When I told my parents that I wanted to go into this industry, they were very depressed. I think they still don't exactly understand what the job, they've come to set, they're like, I don't know what's going on. My mom once brought food to set. It was amazing, like trays and trays of food. It was incredible. Crafty felt funny, but I felt great. Directing is home. It's home. I feel the most myself in that space. It is not always a functional home, but it is my home, and I can't really imagine myself anywhere else. And I think that without it, I wouldn't be here. And I mean like on this plane, not in this room, but yeah.
And I guess, Lucia, you have the final word.
It's really mirrors so much of what so many people said here, but when I was a kid, I would stay up with a little, lamp on my head and read books until I literally would pass out, and I was obsessed with books and obsessed with stories, and I just felt like I could see them. I could just see them in my brain, and I became very addicted to the idea of being able to say, well, this is how I see this thing. And I didn't go to film school, but really in the end, my film school was watching my parents in the restaurant industry, because my parents worked together. They owned a restaurant, and they did it together. And they dealt, and it's like, a restaurant is like, it's an art form. You're creating art for people, but you also have to deal with the back of house and in the business of it and how to run that place. And so getting to watch my parents do that together, it's exactly what my husband and I do, because we work together. It's like you deal with front of house, you deal with the executives and with the actors, and you deal with the back of house, which is, your crew and marketing people or whatever it is. And so for me, being able to watch to see how my parents were able to protect the art with the business and work together was really the way that I learned how to be on a set. And so, when I'm in the weeds on set and we're behind, and it's exactly like when I was waiting tables as, a teen, being like, okay, we have to just deal with one thing at a time and one foot in front of the other. And so in a weird way, like I was like bred to be a director in a really backwards way, and I didn't really see that at the time. But in a way, it's like really the only thing I can do. I'm really bad at everything else. Also, is the truth.
Well, with that, I just want to say on behalf of everyone here and myself, thank you all. Thank you for inspiring us.
Paris.
Thank you for your work.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for what you shared today. Found it very moving. And I hope that you guys also found your heart up here. So give them a big round of applause.